Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly wild period in sports history. Okay, so let's get right into how the global conflict during the Second World War turned professional football into an absolutely bizarre landscape. We're talking phantom matches, borrowed fans, erased records, and just incredible human resilience. It's the story of how the beautiful game managed to survive when the entire world was practically falling apart, and the unbelievable lengths people went to just to keep playing.
Picture this for a second. You're standing in a stadium surrounded by thousands of cheering people, but you literally cannot see your own hand in front of your face. So how on earth do you broadcast a match you can't see? Well, on January 1st, 1940, Hearts faced off against Hibs in an Edinburgh derby in front of an estimated 14,000 fans. But the stadium was completely swallowed up by a fog so thick that the players couldn't even see each other, let alone the ball. Now, normally, a match like this would be called off immediately. But, as you know, these were not normal times.
The solution to this problem is just staggering. The match was scheduled to be broadcast by the BBC to British forces stationed overseas. But the UK War Office stepped in. They realized that if the BBC canceled the broadcast or even mentioned the fog, German bombers listening in on the radio would instantly know that Edinburgh was hidden by weather and couldn't be easily defended. So the BBC announcer, a guy named Bob Kingsley, was explicitly ordered to just fake the play-by-play.
Meanwhile, down on the grass, pure, unadulterated chaos. Because he couldn't see a thing, the referee actually blew the whistle for halftime 2 minutes early, realized his mistake, and literally had to drag the players back out into the mist. Up in the commentary box, Bob Kingsley had zero clue what was happening. He tried using runners to get updates, but that completely failed, so relying purely on the disembodied cheers of the blind crowd, he made the whole thing up. In fact, Kingsley didn't even know when the real match ended, so he just kept on inventing thrilling action for another 15 minutes after the final whistle. And it gets better. Hearts left winger John Donaldson literally got lost on the pitch. Long after the match ended, a search party found him still patrolling his flank in the gloom, screaming for a pass from teammates who are already back in the dressing room. It just perfectly encapsulates the absurdity of the era.
Moving to Section 1, Wartime Leagues and War Cups, how the system was rebuilt. So when official national leagues were suspended in September 1939, the sport had to pivot, and fast. They shifted to regional, localized divisions. The whole goal here was to minimize travel because of strict government restrictions, while still keeping public morale up. They completely scrapped promotion and relegation, and instead of the FA Cup, they introduced the Football League War Cup. And if you're wondering just how desperate folks were for a distraction, well, get a load of this number. 72,000. That is 72,000 fans who completely defied the threat of air raids to pack into Wembley Stadium for the first War Cup final in June 1940, watching West Ham beat Blackburn Rovers. I mean, it proves an absolute, undeniable desperation for the game. But hey, these matches weren't just a morale booster, right? They were massive financial engines. The government generated some seriously lucrative revenue through entertainment taxes levied on these huge crowds, and the games themselves raised substantial funds for wartime charities. In a very real way, the continuation of football was officially serving the war effort. On to Section 2, Guest Players and Borrowed Fans, the chaotic rosters. Before the war, you obviously had your standard signed professionals. But during wartime, man, rosters were basically just whoever was available that morning. Legendary players like Matt Busby served in the Army Physical Training Corps and would simply guest for whatever team happened to be closest to his military base at the time. Entire squads were completely depleted. At one point in 1940, 18 players from West Bromwich Albion were busy working in a munitions factory in Oldbury. This setup led to some unbelievable anomalies. Check this out. On Christmas Day 1940, Brighton travels to play Norwich. But because of wartime travel constraints and military call-ups, Brighton arrived with exactly 5 players. They literally had to beg volunteers from the crowd to put on a shirt just to make up the numbers. The result? Norwich thrashed this cobbled-together squad of random fans and 5 pros by an unbelievable score of 18-0. No way, right? It was a really strange era where competitive success completely decoupled from financial success. Take lower league Port Vale in the 1944-45 season. They suffered immensely out on the pitch, finishing 46th out of 54 teams in the North First Championship, enduring heavy 8-1 and 6-2 beatings from their local rivals Stoke City. Yet, miraculously, they survived financially. Because dedicated fans kept showing up week after week, Port Vale actually posted a $1,262 profit that season, driven by over $11,000 in gate receipts. People just wanted to watch some football. Section 3. Goals that never counted. The Phantom Stats. Because the FA stamped these wartime games as strictly unofficial, thanks to those chaotic rosters we were just talking about, massive achievements were totally wiped from the record books. Look at Newcastle United legend Jackie Milburn. He actually scored 238 goals for the club. But because those wartime goals don't officially count, his recognized total sits at only 200. That's exactly why modern striker Alan Shearer, with his 206 goals, is the one holding the official Newcastle record today. But this erasure hits some players much harder than just losing a few goal records. Which brings us to Frank Soo. Soo was the first player of East and Southeast Asian origin, and actually the first non-white player overall to ever represent the England national team. He played brilliantly for England 9 times during the war while also serving in the Royal Air Force. But because of that unofficial tag, he was completely denied his official caps. It wasn't until October 2025, over 80 years later, that the FA finally corrected this historical blind spot and awarded Frank Soo a posthumous honorary cap. Moving on to Section 4, the German football front, the Galiga dominance. Now, today, the Revier Derby between Schalke and Borussia Dortmund is one of the tightest, most fiercely contested rivalries in world football, right? But during the wartime Gauliga era, totally different story. Between 1936 and 1944, Schalke won 14 matches against Dortmund and lost only once, and the scores were just eye-watering. In October 1940, Schalke absolutely obliterated Dortmund 10-0. In December 1939, it was 9-0. It was a period of total, uncharacteristic dominance, completely shaped by the bizarre conditions of the era. Finally, Section 5, morale in a dark time, the ultimate purpose. So you gotta ask yourself, why go through all this trouble? Why play through zero visibility fog, use random fans as players, and completely ignore the records? The logistical nightmares alone were off the charts. For instance, in February 1942, the fall of Singapore to the Japanese severely hit the global supply of natural rubber. Suddenly, you couldn't even make the rubber bladders needed inside the leather footballs. But the drive to keep playing was so incredibly strong that manufacturers rapidly innovated. They developed entirely new synthetic rubber substitutes just so the matches wouldn't have to stop. Well, as historian Matthew Taylor points out, this wasn't just a game anymore. It was literally the psychological glue holding a terrified, anxious society together. It offered consistency. It was a brief escape from the harsh reality of rationing, the air raids, and the devastating news from the front lines. It was this defiant statement of normalcy, bringing tens of thousands of people together on a Saturday afternoon to cheer, shout, and feel a real sense of unified community during 6 agonizing years of war. Looking back at these phantom matches, the makeshift teams, and the erased goals, it's just an incredible testament to the enduring power of sport. So, the final thought I'll leave you with in this explainer is this. Consider the highly polished, multi-billion-dollar machinery of sports today. If our world completely turned upside down tomorrow, would modern sports adapt as scrappily, as passionately, and as beautifully to keep us unified as they did back then? Thank you so much for exploring this remarkable piece of history with me today. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.